Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Roundup. We're doing things just a little bit differently this week. I want to highlight a rookie mock draft that we did after the NFL draft with Ian Hartitz and Dwain McFarland on the Board Pro 75. So we're going to go through that today. It is a rookie dynasty mock draft. Hope you enjoy. All right, guys, now let's get into our draft from the WebEx board right here. We're going Dynasty PPR rookie 1 quarterback league. Ian, I think for whatever reason you get to start first. It's the influencer 101. I like it.
Great day, be great, Kendall. You know that. So with my first pick, I would like to select Kendall choosing dark mode. Nah, I'm just playing, everyone. Marvin Harrison Jr. from the Ohio State University, first non-quarterback selected, and for a good reason. As much as my man's didn't feel like, practicing conditioning because he's a football player throughout the offseason, we all knew it was going to be him at number 4 pretty much the whole way. So Kyler Murray under center, very little competition outside of Greg Dortch, Michael Wilson, and Trey McBride. Quality wide receivers, but none of them being the true alpha that Marvin Harrison Sr.'s son is here in Arizona. So absolutely love Marv. Hey, it's going to cost you a pretty penny in redraft as a top 10 pick, but in non-super flex dynasty, easy one-on-one for me.
All right, Dwayne, what do you got?
Yeah, we're going Malik Neighbors. I mean, I don't get the potential to be paired up with a 4,000+ yard passer, which I think Kyler Murray still has the ability to pull off. We're going to have Daniel Jones at least for this next season, and then we'll see what happens after that. But Neighbors, I was surprised with how closely he graded out to Marvin Harrison Jr. in the rookie supermodel. Obviously, Marv came in with the best score we've seen since 2018 at the 100th percentile, but Neighbors was third, just behind Jamar Chase. So this is a guy that'll move all over the formation, Kendall, and not a lot of target competition either. So even though we may think the ceiling for a Daniel Jones-led passing attack is 3,500 yards instead of 4,000, it wouldn't surprise me if Malik Neighbors actually had a higher target share than what we see from Marvin Harrison Jr. in year 1.
I like it. That's a good pick. Ian, you got number 3. You got Caleb Williams still on the board. Jaden Daniels, Rome Odunsi. Where are you going?
I would say it was an okay pick, Kendall. This is a good pick. Give me Rome Odunsi. Bears wide receiver 3, I think, for 2024. It's not going to be necessarily ideal. That was one of our immediate takeaways, after Thursday, where, I think Dwayne's initial projections actually had him outside the top 60. So projections, not rankings. Chill out, Bears fans. But the most important thing here is in a dynasty format, we should be all good in the hood by 2025 at the latest. The Keenan Allen rental is awesome. Rome and DJ, honestly, are both going to learn a lot from the guy, but he is only signed through 2024. So at that point, we're then going to have at least 4 years of the Caleb Williams Rome Odunsi partnership tied up in a Chicago city where, guess what, guys? They're building a new stadium and it actually has a dome. Follow suit, Buffalo. When you have a generational franchise quarterback, maybe give the guy a little bit of an advantage with that sweet, sweet dome sometimes. So Rome Odunsi, again, more of a pick for the future, but I think this is a good example where landing spots do matter in fantasy land, but far more so in redraft. When it's dynasty like this, give me clearly the number 1 player on the board.
You're right.
Yeah, and I think
that was a way better pick. No.
Yeah. And I think if folks, if we just talk redraft for a second, if you're looking at Rome, Ian talked about how the projections looked, and it's tough, right? Just because you have a rookie quarterback, even though we think it's going to be an upgrade from where we were, but you have 2 very high-end target earners. So at best, I really do think Rome's wide receiver 3 this year. I don't think there's a lot of worlds where he passes that, but if DJ Moore misses some time, if Keenan Allen, who's getting older, misses some time, there are still doors that could open up for Odunsi. And obviously, the Bears are going all in on the passing attack. Just looking at the moves they made this offseason, every single one of them seemed to point to more passing. So there's enough there to potentially offset things to where maybe Rome, in a really good world, finishes up as an upside. He could finish as an upside wide receiver 4 that has stints in your lineup where he's a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 2. So I still think that there's an opportunity for him this season. It's like Ian said, though, it's just going to be, there's a lot of obstacles there that have to go right. And it's going to depend on where he goes in drafts. Before the draft, Kendall, this was a guy going in the 30s. So I don't think you can take him there anymore. I think you take him more as a wide receiver 4. And since Ian got me all excited about Rome Odunsi, I'm just going to go ahead and go with Caleb Williams here. This would have been Brock Bowers before the draft, but the draft was not kind. We'll get to Brock Bowers in a minute. So I'm going with Caleb Williams here. And I think this is a tier break. If you're talking about the best players in the draft that got at least semi-good landing spots. Marv got a great landing spot. Neighbors pretty good. Rome, like Ian said, tough year one. But Caleb Williams, this is a guy that's surrounded by Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. They've got Cole Kmet. They got DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. Ian's favorite, Gerald Everett. He's going to be out there pimping that visor, probably going to have a really cool number. So even if he doesn't get the ball a lot, it's just going to be enough like to get us all excited. So yeah, I think Caleb Williams is the next pick. Now, if I am in a league where, like we're talking about, you're only required to start one quarterback and I've already got an elite player, I'm probably trying to trade down out of this pick to someone else that doesn't have the quarterback that they like. And then I would just kind of play it from there because there's a big group of guys after this that I think are pretty close.
I think that's a good call out for the trades. I know a lot of people have been asking about that. So let's go 105, Ian. What do you got?
So I will say in a normal world where I'm competing against 12 other people, I might have been more willing to take Jaden Daniels here, but this isn't a normal world. I know Dwain has his quarterback, so I'm going to wait just a little bit more to get mine. Brian Thomas Jr., come on down. Low key hit one of the better landing spots. Again, I know we were all infatuated and rightly so with the idea of someone going to the Cardinals, the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Bills. And yeah, we are excited about those wide receivers too. But after that group, we did have teams like the Jaguars, like the Patriots, where again, maybe not quite as convinced about the high-end QB play and a little bit more competition, especially in Jacksonville. But still, we're talking about Brian Thomas Jr., in my mind, walking into 3 wide receiver sets from day one, move over Zay Jones. And at that point, let's actually see what Trevor Lawrence can do with the first kind of contested catch maestro of his NFL career. I mean, this was really what his calling card was back at Clemson. Some of those back shoulder fades, again, the guys like Justin Ross and T. Higgins just making plays all over the place. And I do think Brian Thomas Jr. has that in him, where we're talking about a worst case floor scenario. And this would not be good. Don't get it twisted, but we could see someone emerge as like a DJ Chark, MVS type of talent, where again, I know that's not what you wanted when you drafted him in round 1, but it's that sort of field stretching upside that's going to make the entire offense better based on the gravity that he's going to have with safeties being forced to stay over the top. So I personally think Thomas Jr. can be way more than that. I think his underneath route running ability is even a little bit underrated at this point. Hey, the guy scored a touchdown every 4 freaking catches last season. I think he knows a little bit what he's doing out there on the football field. So Brian Thomas Jr. is someone that coming in, I know in the supermodel wasn't cracking the top 3, but was also pretty clearly the number 4 wide receiver. I thought this landing spot was good enough to keep him ahead of guys like Worthy, like Keon Coleman, although I admit it is closer, I think, than it was before the draft.
Oh, a shakeup. I like it. Dwain, where are you going next then?
Yeah, I'm going with Xavier Worthy. He and Brian Thomas are the next tier together. Thomas fell a little bit because his draft capital was lower than expected. He's at the 64th percentile in the supermodel. 60th percentile is Xavier Worthy. I don't know that I have to explain this one a lot, but you've got a player that broke out as a true freshman, went absolutely berserk. This is the next best receiver in the draft against man coverage, 32% targets per route run, only behind Marvin Harrison Jr. Also dominated against zone. This is a guy that you can get involved around the line of scrimmage. Kendall, you can give him this easy little looks that you've been trying to give to Kadarius Toney, but he can't stay healthy or just says the wrong things in the media, giving some of those looks to Rashee Rice. So Xavier Worthy is going to have a chance to carve out some of those early in the season. We'll see how long Rice is going to be out, but that's not all he can do. He can attack that intermediate area of the field, even though he's a smaller wide receiver. He's shown that he can hold up with the contested catches. He can take the hits over the middle, and he also has that sweet, sweet speed to get deep. You now pair him up with Patrick Mahomes, who appropriately tweeted a man running, an emoji of a man running as soon as the pick happened. So, yeah, let's do it, Pat. Let's have a track meet every day back in Kansas City. Let's be honest. You won the Super Bowl. We all loved it. It was great. You showed off what you can do without having to have a 5,000-yard passing season. But by adding Xavier Worthy as well as adding Hollywood Brown, and you pair that with Rashee Rice once he's back and Travis Kelce, I think the Chiefs are back in business, Kendall.
There we go. Back in business, never left. The league really let them get Xavier Worthy, so we're just going to have to roll with it. I like it. 107, Ian, what are you looking at?
Going to go ahead and address quarterback, finally. Give me the Heisman Trophy winner himself, Jaden Daniels, now in Washington. Not necessarily the Vikings, that top tier landing spot we were hoping all these guys were going to make their way to, or even Chicago with what they've been able to do at wide receiver. But still, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. Yeah, I'm really not in on the Luke McCaffrey thing going on, but we at least got Terry on one side, and we're feeling good about that. So luckily, even if Jaden Daniels isn't going to come into the league and immediately emerge as this fantastic passer, which I wouldn't rule out, but guys, like, we are here for one thing and one thing only, that sweet Konami code rushing upside. So with Jaden Daniels, again, not thinking we're going to see Lamar Jackson out there, but guess what? 80% of Lamar Jackson's rushing production is still going to put him up near the very top of the league in terms of the most productive rushers at the position. So with Daniels, again, he's one of these quarterbacks who had an extra 3 years in college versus the others. Wouldn't be surprised if that does translate to more immediate NFL production. So I think the verdict is still very much out on who's going to be, the best quarterback of this group, specifically between Daniels and Drake May in real life. But in fantasy, far less of a question for me. Give me Jaden Daniels, the number one rushing QB in this class. And honestly, maybe since Lamar, even though I, again, do believe that Lamar and even guys like Kyler Murray, bit better even at this stage in their career.
I like it. We talked about it a few days ago of just like best landing spots, and he was on our list for someone that landed in a good enough situation. Dwayne, what are you looking at 108?
Yeah, just real quick with Ian, like I do think Jaden Daniels is the tier break now, including the player that I'm about to talk about. But like, if you really need a quarterback, I would take him over Brian Thomas Jr. and maybe even over Xavier Worthy. Like, it just depends on your team needs. But this guy had a 17% design rush rate in college. That is absolutely elite, and a 14% scramble rate. So we're talking about a player that's going to give you, if healthy, 115 to 150 rushing attempts, like Ian said. And he could be a terrible passer, Kendall. He could come out and throw for 2,800 yards. If he gets that many rushing attempts, it's still going to be hard to keep him out of the top 12. But if suddenly he turns into a really good passer, and there are questions there because he really developed that side of his game later in his career. But if that's there to stay, he has a higher ceiling than Caleb Williams. Like, there's a higher ceiling here with Jaden Daniels than there is Caleb Williams. I think there's also more bust factor, but I love the pick by Ian. I am going to go ahead and go with Brock Bowers. I was torn here. I thought about Jonathan Brooks. Kendall, you know how much I love Jonathan Brooks. I don't think it's that bad of a landing spot with Carolina like some people. I don't want to steal Ian's thunder, though. I'll let him highlight all the things about Jonathan Brooks, but he was the number one back in the supermodel. Going with Brock Bowers because I think at some point you've just got to go with the talent, Kendall. And if we were going purely on talent, you could argue Brock Bowers should be as high as number 3 in this class. It's really him and Rome Odunsi battling it out. You've got Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors in a tier of their own up top. Now, the landing spot's not good. We've already got Michael Mayer, who is a good prospect in the supermodel in his own right. He is in the top 5 all time in the supermodel. Brock Bowers is now number 3, was number 2 before the draft, but because he slipped in draft capital, fell behind TJ Hawkinson by just a little bit. But that's not a bad thing. We all love TJ Hawkinson when he's healthy. He's a guy we love taking as a top 5 tight end. So I think that's still the potential ceiling, but we need a creative coaching staff. And let's be honest, when's the last time we saw 2 tight ends work out? Usually they are taking away from one another. Yeah, we can go back to Aaron Hernandez. We can go to Rob Gronkowski, and there's potential that this is the best duo since then, but that's a lot to live up to, Kendall. And again, the coaching staff still has to figure it out. They've got to be able to find a way to keep these 2 players where they can be on the field 70 to 75% plus amount of the time whenever they're dropping back to pass. That's a lot to try to believe in. I think the best hope for Bowers, the cleanest path, is if somehow they get a lot of calls around someone like Michael Mayer and they decide to move him because they really fall in love with Bowers. But outside of that, you're going to need something that is pretty rare. Like, a lot of things are going to have to align, but the talent, Kendall, you can't argue it. The talent is absolutely there for Bowers. So I still want to take the swing in a dynasty draft.
I like it. I like the call out. Ian, what are you looking at?
I was terrified to take Bowers, so I'm so happy that
you don't have to anymore. You're good.
I will happily take RB1 Jonathan Brooks here, and I do think he is very clearly the RB1. Pretty much the only running back from this class that we can, like, with confidence project him to be starting the second he is healthy enough to go. With, I don't even want to say all due respect, with a little bit of respect, I guess, to Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders, who neither of them, let's face it, could do much of anything last year. As much as Chuba was better than Miles, I mean, these were still 2 running backs that, pick any efficiency metric you want, and they're going to be closer to last than they were certainly even the middle of the pack. So right now with Dave Canales coming into Carolina, good reason to believe he'll be able to get more out of Bryce Young in the passing game, but don't underestimate what we can see from Brooks, considering Rachaad White in Tampa, Canales' previous RB1, had more touches than any other running back not named Christian freaking McCaffrey last year. So I do think Brooks is entering an offense that should be better at the line of scrimmage as well. I mean, the Panthers spent like $150 million plus on a pair of guards in free agency to try to fortify the offensive front. Again, has a coach who's willing to feature him in a workhorse role. And honestly, guys, like, I want to to, not be too optimistic about the injury, timeline. I want to be realistic here. But honestly, like Rhapsody just reported that it's possible that Brooks could be ready to go by training camp, let alone even week 1. So I do think this could be a Breece Hall sort of, ramp up situation where even if Brooks is active early in the season, could be on a bit of a pitch count. But hey, once he's ready to go, which is seemingly looking more and more like October, maybe even September, I think we're going to have someone that maybe not a top 12 back from day one, but hey, if he does get that every down Rachaad White role, we could be looking at that sooner rather than later. So Jonathan Brooks, come on down, scoreboard, Dwayne. I feel like I'm looking pretty good over here.
Yeah, I did not like letting you have Jonathan Brooks. Believe me, 71% of the backs that graded out in Jonathan Brooks's range in the supermodel have gone on to have a top 24 finish in their first 2 seasons. Over half of them have ended up posting a top 12 season. So yes, we love Jonathan Brooks.
Should have picked him, man.
He's like, I love him. It's like, well, shoot, he just went at 109, so you should go get him. But what do you think about almost done here at the 10 spot, Dwayne?
I love last names that start with the capital M, lowercase c, capital C. So I'm going with Ladd. Go with Ladd McConkey here. This is a guy that a lot of people look at and think he might have a limited skill set. But whenever I studied him, it just blew me away how diverse his skill set is. He lined up mostly on the outside, Kendall, in college, 69% of the time. So he's a guy that can get out there and take over a starting role immediately for the Chargers. We've got Josh Palmer, who I would say probably is the wide receiver 1, but he's more of a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. But in name, he's the wide receiver 1 on the depth chart. I really think with a new staff coming in, there's a lot to prove for Quentin Johnston. And he did not get off to a good start in his career. Now, we don't want to write off a player that is that young, Kendall. But given what they invested here in McConkey, basically a late first-round pick. This is the second pick in the second round of the NFL draft. I really do like McConkey landing here with Herbert. I think he's going to play inside when they go to 3 wide receivers. I think he has a chance to stay on the field when they're in their 2 wide receiver sets, which they're going to do a lot because they're going to run heavy personnel. They're going to run the football. But I can see him filling in really in that role, similar to what Anquan Bolden was doing late in his career, Kendall, a guy that they really attacked the intermediate and underneath ranges of the field. But he's still got sneaky speed, really good route runner, can still get deep on you. So absolutely love Ladd McConkey. I was torn, though, between him and between the guy that Ian's about to take, because it's another really good landing spot. I just had Ladd graded out as a slightly better prospect.
Okay. All right. So Ian, who are you taking from Dwayne that he likes, but he didn't pick?
I was between these 2 same players. I'm starting to think this is actually a pretty good exercise. So good job, all of us. Not trying to hurt myself, pat my own back. But I'm going with Keon Coleman at the 111 here. New potential, Bills wide receiver 1. I mean, at a minimum, this is a guy who we are expecting to take that Gabe Davis role from day 1. Now, I did say Gabe Davis, not Stephon Diggs. I'm not expecting 150 plus targets for Coleman here in this offense. But hey, it's possible. I mean, looking at the Bills, 86% available targets from last year, 90% available air yards. Those are both tops in the NFL. So with Keon, yeah, a bit of a raw prospect, the contested catch artist where we do have to wonder exactly how much will his skills translate. Can he still separate in the NFL, running a 4.6 40? Well, when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, who is not only a freaking incredible football player, but also someone willing to actually say, F it and toss the ball up, to his big body contested catch wide receiver in tight coverage. I think this really was, if we just had to go through the entire draft before and say where would be the single best team for Keon Coleman to land on, I think would have been the Bills. And that answer could have been the Bills for a lot of these wide receivers again, but hey, Keon happened to be the one that got it done. So I like the Dane Brugler's comp for Keon Coleman and Cortland Sutton. I think that's exactly what we could see here, where no, again, I would be surprised if we see Keon go too far over 1,000 yards or rack up 90 catches or anything like that. But double-digit touchdowns truly on the table for a guy that, again, better at jumping over other human beings and plucking that football out of the air than just about anyone. So McConkey versus Keon, certainly going to be tough in the old redraft streets. I think both guys deserve to be right around each other in that wide receiver 4 tier. But for right now, man, just the way things go, there's another wide receiver coming up that I think we could see, shout out to Xavier Leggett, went 1 pick before him. Not saying Keon's in a complete tier of his own, but for me, I was pretty confident making this pick.
All right, Dwayne, you want to close us out? Who you got?
Yeah. I will just say with what Ian said there,
yeah.
I like Keon Coleman a lot more than Leggett. Leggett, his target rate versus man coverage looked like a running back. And that's not good for a guy that didn't do anything until year 5. So I think that Keon is easily the pick. I think there's a tier break there. And that's also why I'm not going with a wide receiver with this last pick. I'm actually going to go with Trey Benson. I'll say honorable mention was Blake Corum, but when I look at Trey Benson, I think there's just not only a path to him taking over due to injury. And if all things were equal, you say, oh, Kyron Williams goes down, in year one, or you look at a situation where James Conner gets hurt, which is probably going to happen at some point in the season. Like the Rams offense, because you have Sean McVay, is probably the one you want to be invested in. But I think it's probably closer than what people think, Kendall. And I think long term, like when you're looking at the guy that could take over sooner, long term, without just needing an injury, it's probably Trey Benson. And this is a guy that, he looks like an early down back out of the gate, but he is someone that held up well in pass blocking, so he has 3 down potential. I don't think he's ever going to be elite out of the backfield as far as being a receiver. I don't know that he'll ever even reach technically like what we would qualify as good status for fantasy. But I think he is the kind of guy that can manage to stay on the field on passing downs. And that kind of player can still give you a few extra catches, help pad the stat line. They're just never going to be someone that, you're mistaking for like a Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara, one of those types where you're going to get all of the targets. So really like Trey Benson, unique size, speed combination. So there's some big playability there. He's one of the better graded rushers from a PFF standpoint. He's pretty elusive as well. So I want to take Trey Benson. Not sure how many more years James Conner has. Really love James Conner, somebody that perennially, right? People just love to discount. And, I know Ian's here for it because every year Ian and I feel like we've taken James Conner and, it's typically working out well. We have a few weeks where we've got to deal with him being out the lineup, but when he's available, like he is a really good player and he's good on receiving down. So not trying to bash James Conner, but he is getting older and I like what the Cardinals are doing on offense and where they're headed. So I will take Trey Benson with the final
I
pick.
love it. No, I love it. Guys, we just completed the first mock after the NFL draft together on the Board Pro 75. So let's go through it just really quickly. I promise there's a glare here, so I'm not like just trying to see what I'm looking at. But Ian, you started with Harrison, then we went Neighbors for Dwain, you there. Then we went Rome Odunsi, Caleb Williams. We had Brian Thomas at the 5 spot, Xavier Worthy, Jaden Daniels, Brock Bowers, Jonathan Brooks, Lad McConkey, Keon Coleman, and Benson to finish it off. I think it was a good one, guys. Good job. We did it.
Kendall,
thanks.
what's the pick that scares you the most in the first round?
It's probably going to be in this area right here, and it's probably a Brock Bowers. I'm not gonna lie, but the thing is, I like the upside, and that's what you look for in Dynasty. You're not looking for someone maybe when you make the Brock Bowers pick to say, oh, he's gonna contribute to my team right away. So there is potential, like you said, if they trade Michael Mayer or something happens, we never want injuries, but there's a situation that leads to him, not being at the 8 spot. And I can see, like you said, I think Dwain, some people taking him in that 4 or 5 spot because they do see the upside and the potential there. So that's the only one that I know. I've seen a lot of different mock drafts where he goes in the top 5. And then I've seen a lot where he goes where you guys had him today. So that's the only one. That's the only call out.
Dwain, would tight end premium like vastly change where you would be ranking Bowers? At a minimum, I think he probably deserved a nod over like Brian Thomas Jr. at that point.
Yeah, I think he goes right there around where you're considering the quarterback, right? In that format. Yeah. Like if you need a tight end, especially, like I think you're leaning Bowers. If you need the quarterback, like obviously that Caleb Williams is still right there. But yeah, you just want to stockpile talent, period. And so if you have a format change where you're getting the tight end premium, it can work out. And you guys know what will happen. This will be the year that it will work. The Raiders of all coaching staffs will actually figure this out, and it'll be Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer both out there 75, 80% of the routes. They just won't even bother with a wide receiver 3. It's not like when you look at the depth chart, Ian, it's possible, right? Not trying to pick on Trey Tucker and Christian Wilkerson. And they had to sign a ton of undrafted free agents. Like their depth chart was so barren. So you got Hunter Renfrow moving on. So there's not a wide receiver 3 that has to be on the field. So if the coaches, can just be rational here, like there's a clear path to get both of these guys out there. And you've got a head coach that likes to run the football. So that could still work. If you got 2 tight ends out there, we're not saying Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer are going to be mistaken for blocking inline tight ends, but they're still bigger than DBs. If somebody wants to go nickel to try to match up with someone like Bowers, that could still give you a mismatch in the run game. So I think that there's some potential here. I actually moved Bowers up a little bit in the projections this weekend. I was kind of tweaking them throughout the weekend as I just tried to sit back and really think about these landing spots. And as I studied that depth chart for the Raiders, I started getting like, a little bit itchy. I was like, it's not that hard to get these guys on the field given the wide receiver core, but I didn't want to get too carried away.
I like Dwain sitting there on the weekend just saying like, do I take like just sitting there and just kind of shaking a little bit like, do I take Brock Bowers in a better spot?
I was out on a walk. I took like a 90-minute walk. 30 minutes of it was thinking about the Raiders offense. It's just kind of sad.
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
Dwain. Dwain on his hot girl walk just saying like,
I love it.
Gosh, Brock Bowers. But I like it. We'll see where he goes in some of our next mock drafts.
And as always, make sure you go to fantasylife.com. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter and the Betting Life newsletter while you're there. And throughout this entire offseason, make sure you check back. We will have everything from rankings to rookie outlooks, everything in between before the fantasy season gets going. So fantasylife.com. Thanks for joining us this week.